Welcome to our second lesson on this Python programming introduction. Today we're going to talk about something we call a sequential flow. This is an introduction. It's just demonstrates how programming languages follow some kind of a sequence in order to obtain a meaningful output. So the first thing that I'm going to discuss is what we call a print statement. So we have a print statement where this generates the output. So when we do not use a print, we do not get any output. So print, we can print something like hello world, world. You can see the hello world is enclosed in quotation marks. So this is because we want it to be a string. If it's not, then we are going to get an error. If we do not enclose, as you can see here, we have an error, invalid syntax. So it needs to be in quotes, either double quotes or single quotes. To run this spider, we need to press shift and enter. On this side here, we have the output. So the output is hello world because we printed hello world. So that is the output we are getting. So in order to write comments in programming, specifically in Python, we use hash. It's different for each programming language. In Python, we use hash. So you can also press Control 1 to comment on that particular line. You can also use triple quotes, as you can see these triple quotes. Anything that comes in between those triple quotes is not shown in the output as it's seen as a comment. So a comment means it will not appear in the output. So one thing I want to mention is how to ask the user to input something. But before we get there, I want us to do some simple example of just a simple calculation of adding 1 + 1 etc, something like that, and then producing the output. So let's say we are creating something we call a variable. So this is called a variable, and it's going to be assigned a certain value. So we have different types of values. One of them is what we call an integer. So number one is an integer. So an integer, an example is a whole number. An example is 1, 0, 2, 23, etc. Those are all numbers. Number two are numbers with fractional parts, and those are called floating point. So integers, usually Python knows them as int. Floating points, float. So these are numbers with fractional part, decimals, 0.0, 1.0, 1.5, 22 point, anything like of that sort. So that is going to be a float. Number three, we have, so these are the basic ones that I'm trying to mention here. We have a string. These are just a combination of characters. These strings are usually enclosed in quotation marks, like hello. that's a string. Even when we enclose a number in quotation, inside quotation marks, sorry, that becomes a string, whether it's a float or in an integer. So that becomes a string. So these are all types of strings. So these are the basic types of values that we need to mention. We will encounter many of them as we continue in our next lessons. So this is a variable and it stores this value. So whenever I call A, this will be what Python will see, because A is assigned to 1, B is assigned to 10. And now we can do C, which equals to A plus B. So this is just a way of following some kind of a sequence, because this cannot come here, because you can see we have an error, undefined name. The name A is not defined. So it has to follow some kind of a sequence. You have to define A, you have to define B, and then you can now define C using A and B, and then we can print our C. Now we don't need to include quotes, because if we include quotation marks, that means we are printing the string C. And when we do run it by pressing Shift Enter, we print only the string C. That is not what we want. So we do not use quotation marks when we are calling a certain variable. So now you obtain 11. Obtain 11. We can do some kind of formatting to show what we are doing exactly when we're doing the printing part. So I'm going to use F for formatting and then make that a string, but because it's a variable, we are going to enclose it in braces. The same we're going to do with A and B. So I'm going to say that is A plus B equals. So now what we have here is inside the braces, we have the variables. So what we are going to obtain here, Python will not print the variable. It will print the value in which the variable stores. So this variable stores the value 1. A stores the value 1. B stores the value 10. So we are going to get 1 plus 10. So this plus is enclosed and is not enclosed in braces. So it's just a string, the string plus. And also this equal sign is the string equal sign. So let's see what we have here. We have 1 plus 10 equals 11. So it's a very nice way of doing formatting to obtain some presentable kind of results. So I can just leave it that way. And then I'm going to do something else. I'm going to introduce a way of asking the user to input something. And then we're going to see what happens here. So I'm going to say now A, I can use the same A, which will overwrite the first A. Input. We can have something here like enter a number. This is just instructing the user to enter a number. So I'm doing some formatting here so that we have, so that it appears nicely. So I usually prefer to use semicolon and then some space before I enter the quotation mark. B, I'm going to ask the user to input something else. Enter a number B. Let me just use a number A or something, something like that. Huh? And let's see what we have. Print. Let me do some formatting. I hope you do understand what that means. So this, I'm going to say A equals. So what we have here, what we have here is just a string, that string. This space is part of the string. And then here, I'm going to say A, comma, that's part of the string. Then B, we can even say and B equals B. So you need to understand what is a string here, what is a variable here, and what will appear when we do the output. So what will appear? So let's see. I run this, and as you can see, the first thing was printed, this part. Huh? So Python goes procedurally, like it starts from the first line, second line, etc, etc. Okay. So now we are here. Enter a number A. So, and you can see now the formatting is really nicely done so that I can just write like that. Enter. So once I input the number, whatever number I did, I enter. So you can write anything else here, like anything, although it's not a number, but people can do that. So you can see we have A equals 34 and B equals to anything. Okay. So let's do something like, but this time I'm going to make sure that I input number and a number, and then I add, and then you will see what we obtain. So I'm going to say A plus B equals, here I can even add them here, A plus B. I don't need to create this. I can just do it directly here. Okay, so let's see what we have. Okay, so we have, let me do this and do this, and then watch what we obtain. This may not be what you expect. 20 plus 30 equals to 2030. So what Python has done is called concatenation. So Python is seeing this 20 as a string and this 30 as a string. So what happens when we add two strings, we concatenate, we just put them together. That's what happens. We can check the type here by typing a function called type of A, and it's going to give you that type of A is a string. str is for string. So that means it sees A is a string. So we need to do something. We can change this to int, and so we can change that to int. Same with this. Okay, now we can run it and just write 20, 30, and now we have 50. So if we may check the type of A here, you can see that the type is int. So we are able to do that. The next thing is, suppose we enter a float, what will happen? So let's try run it again. And now input 20.5. Oops. So what do we have? Invalid literal for int with base 10. So you can see we're getting an error. So that's not a good idea, because sometimes we may need other types of value. So I'm going to use that eval function, and we will see what happens when we do that. So I'm going to say 20.5 and 0.5. And now we can see what we're getting is also a float, and is 21.0. So here we may check the type, and you notice that it's a floating point. Okay, however, I don't believe that you can input a string. You see, we're getting some kind of an error. So if you want to input just non-numbers, non-digits, the best way to do this is to just use input without even. But if you need to input numbers, then the best way to do it is by using even. Okay, now I want us to do something. I want us to do some calculation now that this is computers applied to mathematics. So we need to focus more on the mathematical bit of it. So the first thing I'm going to demonstrate the simple operators that we use in Python. So some of these operators include plus, minus. So if you're doing subtraction, we have a star if you're doing multiplication. We have double star if you're raising a number to a certain power. We also have forward slash, that is for division. I think, no, we also have something else, integer division or modulus, I think. Yes, this is when we use percentage, we get the remainder. It's the modular something. We get the remainder of a number divided by another number. For example, 3 percentage 2 is going to be 1, as 1 is the remainder when you divide 3 by 2. Yeah. In other words, this is 3 mod 2. Yes. 3 mod 2. Anything else that we need to know? No, I don't think there's any other operator that we will be using. So when you have an operator, then you can create what we call an expression. Like this one was an expression. This plus this divided by this is an expression. So let's see this example. So 3 percentage 1, and let's see what we obtain. So no, 3 percentage 2, sorry. As you can see, we are obtaining 1, which is the remainder. 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. 3 times 2 is 6. What about power? 2, 3 power 2, so double star means power is 9. 3 minus 2 is 1. 3 plus 2 is 5. So you can see those. So this is called an expression, just a combination of values and operators. Is it operands? Operands, I think. So we have defined those operands and we know how they work. Now let's do something, just a simple mathematics procedure called what? We need to do area of a cylinder, for example. If we want to find the area of a cylinder, we need to use a certain mathematical number that usually named as pi. So pi is very important when we calculating areas of circles or anything to do with sphere or something else. So let's calculate area of a what? A surface area of a cylinder. So the surface area of a cylinder is equals to pi times r squared, okay, times 2 if it's closed, plus the area of the curved surface is going to be 2 times pi times r times height. So what we need is to ask the user to input the radius and the height, and then we're going to look for pi inside a module called math. So how do we call the module? So we can call the whole of the module by using import math, and you can see we have a warning because we have not used the module. We can also import the whole of module by saying from math import star. Now in this case, how do we use pi as pi. However, in this case, we use pi as math.pi, but both are just importing everything inside the module math. We can also import the specific function that we need, like from math import pi. So now we are importing specifically pi, and we can just use it by just calling pi. So how do we calculate the volume, the surface area? So the first thing is to ask the user for the radius. So Evan input, enter radius, height. Let me just copy. Height. Now the volume, surface area. Surface area equals to, I wrote it somewhere, so I'm going to copy it here. Copy and paste. So this is 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r8. And now I can print format surface area. SM. So let's see what we have. Enter radius 10, height 10, and we have the surface area as that. So we can do many other things. You can also try doing the volume, just so you also obtain the radius and the height. And you can also try doing just many other simple mathematical calculations. So we're going to stop there for now.